Greetings to you, traveler. I am the modern druid, and welcome to this sixth concept of the delirium. This time, following symbolic misery, we will address the concept of spiritual misery. This concept was also developed by Bernard Stiegler. But to understand it properly, we need to take a fairly long detour through the work of Edmund Husserl and his reflections on the phenomenology of temporal objects. If you're interested in cinema and philosophy, I encourage you to directly explore the lectures Bernard Stiegler gave on this topic, linked in the video description. But let's summarize the essential concepts here. First, what is phenomenology? Phenomenology is the discipline that aims to describe how objects and phenomena appear to us. The term first emerged in the 18th century, but it was Edmund Husserl who, starting in 1900, turned it into a rigorous scientific method. In this context, Husserl gave several lectures compiled under the title Lectures on the Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness. In them, he explores how we become conscious of time. To do so, he studies what he called temporal objects, which are objects that exist only as they unfold in time. Examples include a piece of music, a film, a spoken discourse, like the one you're hearing right now. You can pause them, but if you do stop playing them, they cease to exist as such. A melody exists only in the flow of time, note by note. For Husserl, consciousness is also temporal. He studied these so-called temporal objects to understand the temporality of consciousness. Now let's see how he described the conscious of time, and, for that, let's start with the concept of primary retention. For Husserl, our consciousness retains only a few elements from what we perceive. He called that primary retentions. It is what just passed in our experience, the recent impressions we are taking in account, and the primary retentions are forming the flow of consciousness. Stiegler later clarified, we do not perceive everything equally. We focus, accentuate, select. For Stiegler, primary retentions are primary selections. It's maybe linked to what some call cognitive bias. Out of everything our body perceives, we only become consciously aware of select things. Our stream of consciousness would be made up of these selected primary retentions, namely, what we remind in the just past. Let's see now the secondary retention. These are memories, past experiences we can recall, from the long term, not in the just past. They are the content we've already been conscious of, and which we can remember. A past reading, a vacation, the face of a parent, a piece of music. These secondary retentions are what we perceived, and they shape what we are capable of perceiving now. Because the secondary retentions, what we lived before, orient the primary retentions, what we are living now, or our current focus. For example, if this is the first time you're hearing about phenomenological theory, it may seem confusing or obscure because you have no secondary retention about it. You may need to re-watch this video and meditate on its material to build those memory traces. But if you've already studied these topics, then what's being said here will likely appear clear and familiar, thanks to your secondary retentions. This is why repetition is essential to meaningful spiritual experiences. One need to listen to a song several times, or to make multiple reading of a text, to really grasp it. And then Bernard Stiegler proposed to add his own concept, the tertiary retentions. The tertiary retentions refers to all material objects, considering that all objects carry memory, in a way. The tertiary retention are the things you perceive now, producing primary retentions. And therefore, they also are the things that will constitute and reactivate the secondary retentions. All objects can store and reactivate memory, like a Madeleine, for Marcel Proust. The tertiary retentions, that is to say, our material environment we face of, shape how we remember, and how we think. And it's only now, with those three concepts, we can address spiritual misery. The spiritual misery appears with the mass media, when a group of individuals can see their streams of consciousness, massively constituted by the same cultural industries of programming, television and radio, and thus sees these streams become synchronized and desingularized. In other words, mass media, radio and television, created an hypersynchronization of primary retentions. We all hear and see the same temporal objects at the same time. As a result, we all have similar secondary retentions, which shape similar primary retentions, which means our streams of consciousness begin to resemble one another. This standardization of memory and perception erodes our singularity. When everyone perceives the same way, focusing on the same industrial tertiary retentions, individuals lose the sense of being individuals. That is spiritual misery. It's the phase beyond symbolic misery. Not only have people stopped producing culture, in a way, they've also stopped producing their own consciousness. This uniformity of mind leads to loss of self, loss of subjectivity, and in some cases, to violent disconnection. Stiegler believed that mass shootings and social breakdowns could be traced to this total desingularization, a psychic condition he called spiritual misery. People no longer know who they are. They feel they don't exist. And in extreme cases, they act out destructively, against others or themselves. In industrialized countries, mass culture, especially TV and radio, starting in the 1980s and 90s, led to a society where everyone watches the same things. Everyone remembers the same things. Everyone selects the same things in the present. We'll see, in the next chapters, that the situation is maybe different today.